Hello there. This is Dave here, and what I want to talk about today is willpower. And this is something that I think can really help benefit a lot of people. I've definitely had a lot of struggles with a lot of vices and bad habits and making bad decisions over the course of my years. So just want to kind of share the lessons and how I sort of developed willpower over the years and what I've kind of observed there through my meditations and just my personal experience. So here we go. First of all, just understanding what willpower is so you know how to use it. What is willpower? There's sort of the energetic definition, and then there's sort of the practical definition. So first, the energetic definition is just willpower is actually an energetic barrier that you use with your mind that controls and regulates the flow, intensity or flow of emotion or thought in the body. And so what this means, as sort of just an example, is just think about a dam. So you've got the water, which would be all your emotion or your thought, and then you've got the barrier, which is the dam. And so you can control the dam, you open or close it, and that lets more water out or keeps more water back, depending on what the needs are. And so that is, I think, a very good analogy of what willpower is relative to thoughts and emotions. It is sort of the governing force for the regulation and expression or suppression of thoughts and emotions. And so that's what it is on an energetic level. On a practical level, what it allows you to do is it allows you to make a choice. If you do not have willpower, then you cannot make a choice. And if you cannot make a choice, then you are not free. You're not free to do what you want when you want in a positive way. And so practically, your willpower allows you to say yes or no to an experience, and not only say yes or no, but also back that yes or no up to that experience. You have to back that up with an action that solidifies the yes or no. You can't just say it mentally, say, no, I don't want this to happen, and then just let it happen anyways. There has to be alignment there between your thoughts and your actions. So willpower allows you to say yes or no to an experience and back that up with an action accordingly. So where do people go wrong with willpower? I think, well, first of all, willpower is not, it's not something that you direct externally into the world around you, because its function is the regulation and flow of thought and emotion in the body. It is something that has to be directed internally inside of you and towards the thoughts and emotions that are coming from you in order to get the proper application and use of willpower. So imagine, just pick a bad habit that you have. Could be, a glass of wine or some junk food or staying up late on the computer. If you're trying to use your willpower to stare at that cookie and force that cookie not to do what you're going to do with it, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't have any action. There's nothing that your willpower can do, to the external vice or bad habit that you have. You have to use your willpower in those scenarios to look inwards to see where that impulse is coming from and deal with it accordingly. So I think a lot of people misinterpret willpower, just don't use it properly because they're trying to direct it in the wrong direction. They're trying to direct it externally instead of internally. Okay, next, willpower is dependent on a few things, and without these things, it's pretty hard to, their qualities, it's pretty hard to use your willpower properly. And the first one is energy. It's very difficult to exercise willpower when you are tired, when you are fatigued, when you have lack of sleep. And this can be not just on a short-term basis, and can also be on a chronic basis. And with the way, as someone who really tries to, adapt healthy living and to look at society and all the bad food out there that depletes people and how much people have to work these days to overwork themselves just to make ends meet. All of the constant stress that we're under, and added on top of that, all of the environmental toxins that we're exposed to, we are subject, I think, at this point in history to more energy drain on the physical body than we have been over a long period of time. And so all of those chronic energy drains can build up in a person and just put them in a scenario where they just have no energy, no vitality, and therefore can't exercise their will and can't make the right choices or decisions in a situation. So having higher energy and vitality does help build your willpower. The second thing that willpower is dependent upon is awareness of your thoughts and emotions. And because willpower has to be directed internally, if you have no idea what you are thinking or what you are feeling in any scenario, or you're in denial about it, you're not going to be able to exercise your willpower properly and appropriately to the effect that you want. And going along with that, the awareness of what you're thinking, you're feeling, you really have to be honest with yourself about what you're thinking and you are feeling to be able to express the proper channel of emotion and thought in any given situation. And willpower is dependent on the direction that the mind sets it to. And so your mind controls your willpower. It directs it in the direction that you will. Now, it seems paradoxical that willpower can direct the flow of thoughts and yet is at the mercy and the control of your thoughts, but it is. And what we're talking about here is the difference between conscious and unconscious thoughts. So you can have unconscious beliefs in you've been brought up with and raised, and they just become part of who you are. Those unconscious thoughts can also direct your willpower based on their programming and what your programming is. And so we want to bring your willpower more up to the conscious mind and have your conscious mind use your willpower as a tool to then go back into the subconscious mind and redirect and reshuffle around your thoughts and your beliefs there to change and bring more harmony into your thoughts, your feelings, and your body. Okay, so willpower dependent on those things. So we need to talk about where people lose their power. And there's a lot of scenarios and a lot of situations where people lose their power. I sort of kind of have classified them into 4 different major categories. And so when you're trying to develop your will in a situation, what you do is you pick kind of a bad habit or vice or a situation where you are losing your power, and you know you're losing your power because you're being drained, or you just don't have the freedom to make the choices that you want to make. And what you do is you look at one of these, you ask yourself, does the governing quality behind my belief, is it under one of these 4 categories? And so the first category is, as I already talked about, which is just poor energy. And so as an example for this one, let me add to that. There's poor energy, and then there's energy balancing. There's 2. And so this is where we're talking specifically about the energy needs of the body. So a body that is not fed properly, that doesn't sleep well, that's not hydrated, that doesn't move, as I've talked about in previous videos, goes into a very sort of survival fight or flight mode where your decisions are mostly reaction based. You really can build up an energy deficit if this happens over a long period of time with high chronic stress and lack of sleep and poor diet. And so in this scenario specifically, your body's needs take over your willpower. And so bad habits in this case will be, and your unconscious decision making will be all based on recuperating energy for the body. As an example, and this was my own scenario, there was a time when I was working crazy amounts of hours and I was trying to sort of build my career and get ahead, and I had this one day of the week where I was always working a 12-hour day. I'd get up at 7 in the morning and I wouldn't come home until 7 at night. And I would have such a long day that the energy expenditure, what I was asking from my body, my body was not able to give. And so when I would come home at the end of the day, I would just plow down on, a tub of Haagen-Dazs ice cream. And in that scenario and situation, my body is taking over my conscious control because it needs to replenish energy. The body and the mind measure the amount of total energy expenditure in the body, and not just calories, but also vitality, emotional, and mental energy that's expended. And if you give more than the sum total of those than you have to give, your thought processes are going to be compromised. And so in that scenario, I would just plow down on a Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and one sometimes wasn't even enough, and I could not break the habit because I was not able to identify at that time that there was just such a big energy deficit being built that I was losing my willpower to my body's subconscious desire just to survive and replenish energy. So look at your bad habits, especially particularly around food and sleep, and seeing if you don't have control of those because it's just your body taking over trying to replenish energy. So there's energy deficit bad habits, but there's also sort of energy balancing bad habits. And you can either be too wound up or too low, I guess, is what I'm looking for. And so you either don't move enough and you're lazy and you're apathetic and you're more propensity towards depression, or you're on the other side of things and you're more anxious and you're hyper and you're driven, and your body's aware of this and needs to balance out its own energy needs and will make you make choices that help balance out those needs. So in this case, if you are hyper and you're driven and you are too wound up, your body's going to naturally gravitate to make you do things that will bring you down, such as drink alcohol, because alcohol is a depressant. It will make you drink cigarettes, not drink cigarettes, smoke cigarettes, or smoke weed, or do anything that will bring your energy back to the middle, and consequently it will do the same in the other direction. If your energy is too low and depressed, then it will make you grab for stimulants, and then in this case it'll be coffee, it'll be sugar, it'll be refined carbohydrates, or other stimulants like epinephrine, or even worse. And so this is the body trying to balance itself out. And so I lump all of these under the category of energy. Either you don't have enough, or there's just a severe polarization of energy from one end to the other. And so second category, that's just one category, so I got a couple more here. The second category where people lose their power, the pain-pleasure dynamic. This is a sort of root animal survival program that is in our minds, that we all move towards pleasure and away from pain. And so this is more of a mental, emotional place where you lose your power, as opposed to the previous example in energy, which was just more physical and the body trying to balance itself out. This is definitely more emotional and what am I trying to say here? It's more emotional in nature, and yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. All right. Okay, mind is wandering there a little bit. So your decisions in this scenario are going to be your unconscious decisions, and where you lose your power is going to be based a lot on instant gratification. There's a big difference between instant gratification and just being happy and content and peaceful over the long term. Instant gratification is definitely trying to make up for some type of emotional pain or just general unhappiness in a person's life. And so when you're looking at your vices and your bad habits, I think this, for me, this one was video games. For some people, this one might be shopping or sex or something like that, something that gives them a lot of pleasure. This can also be food, because food also can be very pleasurable as well. This can be a way, in what happens with this dynamic over the long term is you get a lot of decisions that are made that give you pleasure in the very, very short term and just in the moment. But the more and more you make decisions and repeat those decisions and behaviors over the long run, the worse it becomes for you. And an example with this would just be, junk food for sure. A lot of people just eat junk food and sugar is extremely pleasurable. But over the long term, if you consume it a lot, it's very bad for you, right? So the pain-pleasure dynamic, I think a lot of our society has a lot of this based and drilled into us through advertising and social media and corporations just trying to make money off of us and what gives us pleasure in the moment. So this is something that you got to really be aware of. Okay, the third place I think where people lose their power is within what I call is just a person's own identity. And so what this means is there's who you think you are as a person, and then there's who you really are as a person. And when you're younger, you don't necessarily know who you are. Maybe some people do, but it's more rare. A lot of who you and how you are shaped as a kid is society and parents and school and religious institutions and corporations impressing upon, and national values as well, impressing upon you, and that shapes your identity as you grow up. Now, at some point, if that in your life, if that works for you, that's great. But for a lot of people, that doesn't. And at some point in your life, you look at those things and what society says and what you feel inside, or what someone else is telling you and what you feel inside, and they don't match or correlate. And in this scenario, you lose your power when you choose to make decisions, or just don't have the energy to make decisions, or are afraid to make decisions that are based on who you are as a person and who you authentically are. And so when it's not conscious, and when you're not aware really of who you are, and you're just living based on the beliefs that everyone else has imprinted upon you, you don't really lose your energy and your power that much. But as soon as you start to get a glimpse and an awareness or an idea of how you should be living your life, because that is true to what you are here for, or just how you want to be and express yourself, once you start to become aware of that and choose not to live by that for whatever fear is stopping you, then you really, it starts to become a very, very powerful energy drain, and a place in your life where you can lose tremendous amounts of power, and where your will is just, it really needs to come to the surface. And so, the longer this goes on, the more this becomes to, in the beginning, they'll say you're just not living your authentic self, but the more you become aware of it and the less you act on it, the more it actually becomes living a lie. And when you're living a blatant and utter lie, it really does truly take a lot of your energy. And it's really tough. And in this scenario, we need to use the willpower to help against that. And so, what else do I want to say here? Identity. Just on a side note, I think this is just personally where I think a lot of addictions come from. Some bad habits are energy and the pain-pleasure dynamic, but I think I'm not going to talk too much about addictions here, but when people get seriously addicted to the point where they confuse their identity with the substance or person or job that they're addicted to, and they don't know who they would be without that thing in their life, I think that's really pointing to a strong source of addiction. And so knowing who you are as a person, and just being able to not only live that, but also express that, is where we have to use the willpower in this scenario. Okay, so the next situation and the last one I'm going to talk about is love. And I think a lot of people lose their power just because they want to be loved, but they just don't do it in a healthy way. And a lot of this, I think, comes from just extreme self-criticism and negative self-judgments. And you cannot give love to yourself. Therefore, you're always looking for it from other people or places or scenarios, and so forth. And so you compromise yourself and you give away your power just in order to receive love. You could always be seeking attention, or just always needing validation or rewards, or you always have to be in a relationship and you can never be alone. These are just some examples. I'm sure there's more, but I think this is and can be confused with that pain-pleasure dynamic, because being in love is very pleasurable, but what we're looking for here is something a little deeper than instant gratification. It's sort of a deep connection and something more long and deep that you're looking for. And I think a lot of people lose their power in this scenario when they don't do it, and when they're not looking for love or accepting love or giving or receiving love in a healthy way. Okay, so now that I've gone over the 4 scenarios where people lose their willpower, how do you develop your willpower? So first of all, you have to identify a bad habit or scenario where you don't have a choice, or your choice is being made for you either by your subconscious mind or by someone else. So first of all, you have to identify where you're losing your power. Second thing you have to do is, and you don't have to make decisions about that situation right away, you just have to be in that situation, be mindful of your thoughts and emotions and what you're feeling in that scenario, and then you go back to those, do that over and over again, and every time you're in that scenario where you're grabbing the extra drink, or you're staying up too late on the computer, or your boss is always, controlling you and you can't speak up, be in those scenarios and become very acutely aware of what you're feeling in your body and what you're thinking, and ask yourself what needs to be met here, and then go over those scenarios. Is it just energy? Am I just too tired to put up a fight? Am I just seeking too much pleasure here and I can't control myself because of that? Is it an identity thing? Am I afraid to express myself, or I'm just not true to being who I am, or am I just seeking love? And so go over those scenarios. And so you haven't used your willpower yet, because first you have to identify the thoughts and emotions that you need to use your willpower in a properly way for. And so identify the scenario, and then in that scenario, once you've identified the need that needs to be met, then that's where your willpower comes in. That's where you say to yourself in the situation, what emotion do I need to express here? What needs to be met, and how can I express that? And so if, let's say, it's the pain-pleasure dynamic and you're always grabbing food because it's a great source of pleasure in your life, you have to use your willpower to then face and express where you are not happy in your life, and face that. And then the more you can face that and express that, and the more you can become aware of making other decisions in your life that bring you happiness in other ways, then the more you can reduce that pain-pleasure dynamic of just grabbing food that's pleasurable all the time. In my case, as I stated earlier, there was a big energy deficit, and that was something that I had to correct. And my fear was that I wasn't going to make enough money, and but I had to face that, and I had to reduce my hours, which were already obsessive and excessive anyways. But in my own mind, I had built up this fear that I wasn't going to make enough money. And so I had to face that, use my willpower to force myself to face that belief and face that fear and face that expression of that fear and face the results day after day, until I realized that that fear was just totally ridiculous, then I could reduce my hours, and I satisfied the energy dynamic, so I no longer was in such a big deficit that I had to grab the tub of ice cream after a day of hard work. Okay, and so, do the same with the identity or the love. And so those 4 categories are what you're going to go over in terms of what do I need and what do I need to express in that situation, and focus on feeling that and expressing that. And this is something that you do not do just once. It's something that has to be done repeatedly, over and over again, and your action has to back up what you think and what you want and what you feel in the situation. And if you're aware of all of those, you create a lot more harmony within yourself. And so what's the last thing? Yeah, so willpower. In the end, why do you want to do this? There's a number of reasons. One, to reclaim your energy if you're tired. I always recommend starting with lifestyle issues to build your energy, because if you don't have energy, you can't really do much, and you don't have as much choice as you think you do, because your choices are being governed by your body and your subconscious mind. So it can help create your, increase your energy. It increases your love of self. It's a really, really good way to help build self-love and self-esteem. Establishing boundaries. It decreases you are no longer a slave to as many fears that you have in your mind. It helps you control your mind and control your thoughts a lot better, make better decisions. Life always brings you challenges, and when your willpower is developed properly, you can move into these challenges with a lot more strength and a lot more confidence that it's going to be resolved in a proper way. And of course, freedom. Without will, you do not have freedom of choice. And so when you don't have freedom of choice, it's pretty hard to be happy. So there's a lot of good reasons why you should and want to develop your willpower. And I think that's about all I have to say about that. So hopefully this helps, and thank you for watching.